The handcuffs clicked shut, echoing louder than the highway traffic behind them. It wasn't just an arrest. It was a desecration. Commander Desmond "Des" Kane stood by pump number 4, his navy dress blues immaculate, the Medal of Honor ribbon resting against his chest until the corrupt deputy decided to rip it away. They thought he was just a drifter in a costume. They thought they could bury him in a holding cell and falsify the report like they had a dozen times before. They were wrong. They didn't arrest a suspect. They declared war on the Pentagon. And when the convoy of black SUVs finally rolled into that dusty town, the officers realized too late. Life in federal prison was the merciful option. The heat in Ironwood County wasn't just a temperature. It was a physical weight. It pressed down on the asphalt of Big Al's Gas and Go, making the air shimmer above the pumps. Commander Desmond "Des" Kane didn't mind the heat. He had endured the humid, suffocating jungles of Colombia and the dry, oven-like blasts of Kandahar. A little Texas humidity was nothing. He stood next to his rental car, a nondescript silver sedan, watching the numbers tick up on the pump. He was dressed in his full dress blues, a stark contrast to the dusty surroundings. He was on his way to a funeral. Master Chief Petty Officer Caldwell, his mentor, was being laid to rest 3 towns over. Des had flown in from D.C. that morning and driven straight through. He wanted to pay his respects in full uniform. It was the least he could do for the man who had saved his life twice. He capped the tank and grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler on the island. He was just turning to head inside to pay when the gravel crunched violently behind him. A sheriff's cruiser, mud-spattered and aggressive, swerved into the lot, stopping at an angle that blocked Des's car from leaving. The lights weren't on, but the intention was clear. The door swung open and Deputy Vance Hargrove stepped out. Hargrove was a man who wore his badge like a crown and his gun belt like a threat. He was thick around the middle, his face red from a lifetime of bad food and unchecked anger. He adjusted his sunglasses, though the sun was already dipping low, and hooked his thumbs into his belt. "You look a little lost, boy," Hargrove called out, his voice carrying that faux friendly drawl that usually preceded a bad night for whoever he was talking to. Des paused, the water bottle in his hand. He kept his posture relaxed, his face neutral. "Just passing through, Deputy." "Filling up for the road." Hargrove walked closer, his boots heavy on the concrete. He circled Des, eyes scanning the uniform with exaggerated theatricality. He stopped in front of Des, invading his personal space, smelling of stale tobacco and peppermint gum. "That's a mighty fancy costume you got on there," Hargrove said, smirking. "Halloween come early this year?" "It's not a costume, Deputy," Des said, his voice calm, a deep baritone that usually commanded silence in briefing rooms. "I'm a commander in the United States Navy. I'm heading to a funeral in Oak Haven." Hargrove let out a sharp, barking laugh. He looked back at his cruiser, where his partner, a younger, nervous-looking rookie named Officer Tyler Brooks, was watching through the windshield. Hargrove looked back at Des. "Commander, you? I didn't know they let your kind run the Navy these days, and look at all that." He reached out, his dirty finger flicking the ribbons on Des's chest. Des's hand moved. It was a blur, too fast for Hargrove to track, intercepting the deputy's wrist before he could touch the trident pin. Des didn't squeeze, just held it firm. "Do not touch the uniform," Des said. The temperature in his eyes dropped sharply. Hargrove ripped his hand back, his face flushing a deep, dangerous crimson. His hand dropped instinctively to the grip of his service weapon. "You put your hands on a law enforcement officer. Are you out of your mind?" "I prevented you from disrespecting a federal uniform," Des corrected, releasing his grip. "I have no quarrel with you, Deputy. Let me pay for my gas and leave." "Oh, you're not going anywhere." Hargrove unclipped and had his radio. "Dispatch, I got a situation at Big Al's. Possible stolen valor, assault on an officer. Send backup." Des sighed, a long, weary exhale. "Deputy, check my ID. It's in my pocket. Call the base if you have to." "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake is you thinking you can drive through my town playing dress-up." Hargrove spat. "Turn around. Hands on the car now." Des calculated the variables. He could disarm Hargrove in seconds. He could disable the rookie before he even got out of the car, but that would make him a fugitive, and it would dishonor Master Chief Caldwell. He had to play this the hard way. Slowly, deliberately, Des turned and placed his hands on the hot metal of the rental car. Hargrove kicked Des's legs apart harder than necessary. "Spread them. You got weapons on you? Guns? Knives?" "No weapons," Des said. Hargrove patted him down, roughly grabbing his wallet. He flipped it open, glanced at the military ID, and scoffed. "Looks like a good fake. Where'd you get it?" "Down Atlanta." He tossed the wallet onto the hood of the car, sliding it across the paint. "That is government property," Des warned. "Shut up." Hargrove grabbed Des's wrist, twisting it behind his back and slamming the handcuffs on. The metal bit into the skin tight enough to cut circulation. Hargrove shoved Des against the car, the commander's cheek pressing against the hot metal. "You are under arrest for impersonating a military officer, assaulting a police officer, and resisting arrest." Hargrove announced loud enough for the few people watching from the gas station store to hear. "You're going to regret this, deputy," Des whispered. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. Hargrove leaned close to Des's ear. "The only thing I regret is not catching you sooner. Welcome to Ironwood, soldier boy." The ride to the station was a lesson in humiliation. Hargrove drove aggressively, braking hard to make Des slam against the cage divider in the back seat. The rookie, Brooks, sat in the passenger's seat, silent. He kept glancing back at Des, looking at the uniform, then at the ribbons. "Hargrove," Brooks whispered. That looks real, the ribbon rack. That's a silver star, and isn't that the Medal of Honor?" "Shut up, Brooks," Hargrove snapped. "You think a guy like him has a Medal of Honor? He bought that crap at a pawn shop. These stolen valor guys are sick. They want the respect without the sacrifice. Makes me sick." Des sat perfectly still in the back. He had engaged a mental technique he learned during SERE school: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. He detached himself from the physical pain of the cuffs and the erratic driving. He began to memorize details. Deputy Vance Hargrove, badge number 409, Unit 7, Officer Tyler Brooks, badge number 412. They arrived at the station, a squat brick building that smelled of mildew and floor wax. Hargrove hauled Des out of the car, grabbing him by the collar of his dress jacket. "Watch the jacket," Des said. "I don't give a damn about the jacket." Hargrove growled. He shoved Des through the back door past a booking desk where a bored-looking sergeant was eating a sandwich. "What you got, Vance?" the sergeant asked, mouthful. "Stolen valor, assault," Hargrove bragged. "Guy thinks he's Rambo." They pushed him into the processing room. Hargrove unlocked the cuffs, but only to strip search him. "Jacket off," Hargrove ordered. Des removed his jacket carefully, folding it as best he could before Hargrove snatched it away and threw it into a plastic bin, crumpling the pristine fabric. "Shoes, belt." As Des stripped down to his white t-shirt and trousers, Hargrove picked up the jacket again. He was looking for something, anything to mock. He saw the name tag. "Sterling, Sterling," Hargrove muttered. "Sounds made up." He pulled a pocket knife from his belt. "Don't," Des said. His voice echoed in the small, tiled room. Hargrove looked at him, eyes glinting with malice. He took the tip of the knife and ran it under the threading of the trident pin, the symbol of the Navy SEALs. With a sharp tug, he popped the pin loose. It fell to the floor with a metallic clink. "Oops," Hargrove grinned. "Must have been loose. Cheap manufacturing." Des stared at the pin on the dirty floor. A fury, cold and white-hot, began to build in his chest. That pin had been pinned on him by his commanding officer after Hell Week. It represented brothers lost and blood spilled. "Pick it up," Des said softly. "Or what?" Hargrove stepped forward, chest to chest with Des. "You're going to hit me again? Please do. I'd love to add a felony to your sheet." "Officer Hargrove," Des said, his voice dropping an octave. "I am giving you one chance to fix this. Check my fingerprints. Run my name in the NCIC database. If you do not, you will destroy your career and bring down this entire department." Hargrove laughed, a harsh sound. "Book him, Brooks. Throw him in holding cell 3, the one with the broken AC." Brooks hesitated. He bent down and picked up the trident pin, looking at the heavy gold construction. It didn't feel cheap. It felt real. He placed it gently on the counter, avoiding Dez's gaze. "Sorry," Brooks mouthed. Des didn't acknowledge him. He looked straight at Hargrove. "I need my phone call." "You'll get your call when I'm done with my paperwork," Hargrove said, turning his back. "Could be an hour, could be tomorrow." They shoved him into cell 3. It was a concrete box, stiflingly hot. There was a metal bench and a toilet. Des sat on the bench, closing his eyes. He didn't pace, he didn't yell. He waited. Time passed. Finally, the heavy door opened. It was the rookie, Brooks. He looked pale. Sir?" Brooks said through the bars. Hargrove went to dinner. "Sergeant said you can make your call now." Des stood up and walked to the bars. "Open it." Brooks unlocked the cell and led him to a wall phone in the hallway. "You got 5 minutes. Local calls only." Des picked up the receiver. He didn't dial a lawyer. He didn't dial a family member. He dialed a number he had memorized for absolute emergencies. A direct line to the Pentagon Special Operations Command Watch Floor. It rang twice. "Watch Officer Lieutenant Commander Hale," a crisp voice answered. "Hale, this is Commander Desmond Kane. Authorization code Sierra Tango 940 Zulu. I am currently being held unlawfully by the Ironwood County Sheriff's Department. I have been assaulted, and my uniform has been desecrated." There was a silence on the other end, followed by the rapid clicking of a keyboard. "Confirmed. Commander Kane, we show you." "Good God, sir, are you injured?" "Negative, just detained. The arresting officer is Deputy Vance Hargrove. He believes I am a stolen valor case. He destroyed my trident." "He did what?" The voice on the other end hardened. "Sir, where are you exactly?" "Ironwood County Jail, Texas." "I'd sit tight, Commander. Do not say another word to them. I am waking up the Admiral." "And, sir, yes? We're coming to get you." Des hung up the phone. He turned to look at Officer Brooks, who was watching him with wide, fearful eyes. Who was that?" Brooks asked. Des walked back to his cell and sat down. "That was the United States government, son, and they are very upset." The next morning, the sun rose over Ironwood with the same oppressive heat. But inside the sheriff's station, the atmosphere had shifted. It was subtle at first. A fax machine that wouldn't stop printing. A phone line that kept ringing with no one on the other end. Sheriff Elias Reed walked in carrying a large coffee and a bag of donuts. He was a massive man, the kind who had played football in high school and never let anyone forget it. He ran the county like his personal fiefdom. "Morning, boys," Reed grunted, walking past the dispatch desk. "Quiet night." Hargrove was sitting at his desk, feet up, scrolling through his phone. "Easy peasy, Sheriff. Bagged a lunatic in a Navy outfit at Big Al's yesterday. Guy thinks he's a SEAL." Reed chuckled. "Another one? People are crazy. Did you check him out?" "Nah, didn't need to." Hargrove waved a hand dismissively. "Fake ID. Fake attitude. I let him rot in cell 3 overnight. Figured we'd arraign him this morning, give the judge a laugh." Reed nodded, taking a bite of a glazed donut. "All right, bring him up. Let's get it over with." Hargrove stood up stretching. He grabbed the keys and walked back to the cells. He opened the door to cell 3. Des was doing push-ups. One-handed push-ups. He was moving with a rhythmic, terrifying precision. He stopped when the door opened, standing up smoothly, not a drop of sweat on him, despite the heat. "Morning, sunshine," Hargrove sneered. "Judge is ready for you." Des walked out, hands behind his back. He looked Hargrove in the eye. "Is my uniform ready?" "It's in the trash bag where it belongs," Hargrove said. "You're going to court in Orange." They brought Des to the booking area. Sheriff Reed looked him over. He saw the posture, the dead calm eyes, the physical fitness that was clearly not the product of a gym membership, but a functional, lethal training. A seed of doubt planted itself in Reed's gut. "What's your name, son?" Reed asked. "Commander Desmond Kane, United States Navy," Des replied. Reed frowned. Hargrove? You ran his prints, right? Hargrove froze. The machine was acting up last night, Sheriff. I was going to do it now. Reed's face turned purple. You put a man in a cell overnight without running his prints? Are you an idiot? He's a fake, Sheriff. Look at him. Run them now, Reed roared. Hargrove sulked over to the scanner. He grabbed Dez's hand and pressed his fingers onto the glass. The machine beeped, processing the data. They waited. Then the computer screen flashed red. A siren noise, one that neither Hargrove nor Reed had ever heard before, began to blare from the PC speakers. A large dialog box popped up on the screen. It didn't show a criminal record. It showed a single flashing message. Warning, classified identity, Level 5 clearance, do not detain. Contact Department of Defense immediately. Hargrove stared at the screen, his mouth open. What the hell is this? A glitch? Reed shoved Hargrove aside and stared at the monitor. His face went pale. That ain't a glitch, Hargrove. Suddenly, the phone on Reed's desk rang. Not the public line, but the red emergency line that connected directly to the state police and federal agencies. It had never rung in Reed's years as sheriff. Reed stared at the phone. He looked at Dez. Dez just tilted his head slightly. You should answer that, Sheriff. Reed picked up the phone with a trembling hand. Sheriff Reed. Sheriff Reed. A voice boomed on the other end. It wasn't a question. This is Admiral Donovan Hale, Chief of Naval Operations. I have a report that you are holding one of my officers, Commander Kane. Is this accurate? Reed felt his knees go weak. Admiral, we have a suspect here who claims the Admiral's voice could have cut glass. Sheriff, you are currently holding a decorated Navy SEAL and a recipient of the Medal of Honor. You have exactly minutes to release him and return his property before I designate your police station a hostile target. Reed stammered. And, Sheriff, the Admiral continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, my sources tell me his uniform was desecrated. If there is a single scratch on that man, may God have mercy on you because the United States Navy will not. The line went dead. Reed slowly hung up the phone. He looked at Hargrove, who was still staring at the computer screen. Unlock him, Reed whispered. What? Hargrove asked. Unlock him, Reed screamed, grabbing his keys and throwing them at Hargrove's head. You idiot! You arrested a Navy SEAL. The Pentagon just called me personally. Hargrove fumbled with the keys, his arrogance replaced by confusion and fear. He uncuffed Dez. Dez rubbed his wrists. He didn't smile. He looked at Reed. Sheriff, I want my uniform. I want my trident, and I want the dashcam footage from Deputy Hargrove's car preserved. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Reed was sweating profusely. Hargrove, get his things now. Brooks, get the commander a coffee, a chair, something. Hargrove ran to the property room. He came back holding the crumpled jacket and the loose trident pin. He thrust them at Dez. Here, take it and go, Hargrove muttered, trying to regain some shred of bravado. Dez took the jacket. He smoothed it out on the counter with agonizing slowness. He picked up the trident pin. He looked at the bent needle where Hargrove had pried it off. I'm not going anywhere, Sheriff, Dez said, looking up. What? Reed asked. You're free to go, Commander, Reed said. It was a misunderstanding, a bad mistake. We'll drop all charges. The charges against me are dropped, Dez said. But the crimes committed by this department are just beginning to come to light. Now look here. Reed stiffened, his protective instinct kicking in. We made a mistake. Don't push your luck. You get out of my town and we forget this happened. Dez walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I can't do that, Sheriff. Why not? Dez pointed out the window. Because they are already here. Reed and Hargrove ran to the window. Turning onto the main street of Ironwood wasn't just a car, it was a convoy. 4 black SUVs with government plates flanked by 2 military police trucks. And above them, the distinct rhythmic thumping of a helicopter rotor blade cut through the morning air. A Black Hawk helicopter painted in dark gray was descending toward the high school football field across the street. Oh my God, Hargrove whispered. Des turned back to them, his face hard as stone. "I told you, Deputy. Hard karma." The sound of the helicopter landing on the football field wasn't just noise. It was a physical force that rattled the windows of the sheriff's station. Dust from the dry field coated the cruisers in the parking lot, a symbolic layer of grit covering the department's shine. Sheriff Reed stood frozen at the window. He had spent decades bullying locals and intimidating state troopers, but he had never stared down the barrel of the United States military. "Lock the doors!" Hargrove panicked, reaching for his radio. "Tell dispatch to lock the front doors." "Put the radio down, you idiot!" Reed shouted, slapping the device out of Hargrove's hand. "You don't lock the doors on the feds, you open them and you pray." The front doors of the station didn't just open, they were breached. Two military police officers clad in tactical gear with federal agent emblazoned on their vests swept into the lobby. They didn't have weapons drawn, but their hands were hovering near their holsters and their posture screamed threat assessment. Behind them strode a man in a pristine Navy service khaki uniform. He was tall, silver-haired, with the golden oak leaves of a lieutenant commander on his collar and the insignia of the Judge Advocate General's Corps. This was Lieutenant Commander Bennett Lang, a man known in legal circles as the Shark of Norfolk. Flanking him were two men in suits, FBI. Lang walked straight to the booking desk, ignoring the stunned sergeant. He scanned the room, his eyes locking onto the sheriff and then finally resting on Commander Kane. Kane was standing by the window, holding his crumpled jacket. Lang stopped, snapped his heels together, and rendered a sharp, perfect salute. "Commander Kane, sir," Lang barked. "Lieutenant Commander Lang, JAG Corps. I'm relieving you of this situation." Des slowly returned the salute. "At ease, Bennett. Took you long enough?" "Traffic was murder, sir," Lang said, his face deadpan. He then turned slowly to face Sheriff Reed. The warmth vanished from his eyes. "Who is the commanding officer of this facility?" Reed stepped forward, trying to inflate his chest, but looking small. "I am Sheriff Elias Reed. Now look here. We have a jurisdiction issue." "We have no issues, Sheriff," Lang interrupted, pulling a folded document from a leather portfolio. "This is a federal warrant issued by the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas. It authorizes the immediate custody of Commander Desmond Kane, the seizure of his vehicle, and the securing of all evidence related to his detainment." "Ah, evidence," Hargrove squeaked from behind the sheriff. "It was a standard arrest." Lang's eyes snapped to Hargrove. He looked at the deputy like one looks at a cockroach on a dinner plate. "And you must be Deputy Hargrove, the man who assaults superior officers." Lang signaled to the FBI agents. "Secure the commander's vehicle, and I want the server room isolated now." "Now, wait a minute," Reed shouted, his face reddening. "You can't just waltz in here and take my servers. That's county property. We have sensitive cases on there." One of the FBI agents, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow named Special Agent Pendergast, stepped forward. "Sheriff, under the Patriot Act and Title 18, interfering with a federal investigation involving a high-level clearance officer allows us to do whatever we deem necessary. Commander Kane was transporting classified material in his personal vehicle. By impounding that car and handling his effects, your deputy may have compromised national security. That gives us jurisdiction over everything, even your coffee maker." Hargrove paled. "I didn't steal nothing. I just tossed his wallet on the hood." "We'll see," Pendergast said. "Agent Kovac, start pulling the hard drives. I want the dashcam footage from Unit 7 immediately." Hargrove lunged forward. "No, you can't take the dashcam." It was a reflex action born of panic. Hargrove tried to block the door leading to the back offices. In a split second, the two MPs had Hargrove pinned against the wall. One of them twisted Hargrove's arm behind his back, the exact same move Hargrove had used on Des. "Assaulting a federal agent," Lang noted calmly, checking an invisible watch. "Add it to the list." Sheriff Reed watched his deputy get handcuffed. He realized the walls were closing in. He looked at Des. "Commander, tell them this is unnecessary. We were letting you go." Des walked over to Hargrove, who was now pressed cheek first against the wall, panting. Des leaned in close. "You asked me if I had weapons," Des whispered. "I told you no, but I never said I didn't have an army." Des turned to Lang. "Secure the station, Bennett. Nobody leaves, not until we find out why this deputy was so terrified of a simple dash cam video." Lang nodded. "Lock it down. Nobody in or out. Sheriff, you're in your office. Don't touch the phone." The station, once the seat of Reed's power, was now occupied territory. The hunters had become the prey. The occupation of the Ironwood Sheriff's Department lasted hours. The locals gathered outside, whispering, filming with their phones as federal agents carried boxes of files out to the SUVs. The rumor mill was on fire. Terrorists, spies, murder. Inside, the air conditioning was humming, but the sweat was real. Commander Desmond Kane had showered in the locker room and changed into a fresh set of fatigues brought by the team. He sat in the sheriff's briefing room, which had been converted into a command center. He wasn't acting as a detainee anymore. He was leading the operation. Agent Pendergast walked in, looking grim. He was holding a tablet. "Commander, we cracked the encryption on the dashcam footage. Hargrove tried to delete it remotely before we breached the door, but he's not tech-savvy enough to scrub the cloud backup." "Show me," Des said. Lang and Kane gathered around the tablet. The video played. It showed the interior of Hargrove's cruiser. Hargrove was on his cell phone, not the radio. The audio was crystal clear. "Yeah, boss, I'm near Big Al's," Hargrove's voice said on the recording. "No, the shipment is late. The cartel boys said wait." Hargrove paused in the video, squinting through the windshield as he drove past the gas station. He saw Des standing by the pump in his dress blues. "Boss, we got a problem," Hargrove said, his voice tightening. "There's a Fed at the pumps. Navy looks high brass, dress uniform." A voice on the other end of the phone crackled, garbled but audible. "Is he looking at the trucks? The tanker?" "He's looking around," Hargrove lied. "He looks suspicious. He might be a scout. If he sees the plates on the tanker when it rolls in, get rid of him," the voice on the phone ordered. "I don't care how. Stall him. Arrest him. Just get him off the lot before the delivery gets there." "Roger that," Hargrove said. "I'll cook something up. Stolen valor. Easy pickings." The video ended. The room was silent. Des looked up, his jaw set. It wasn't just prejudice, it was protection. Pendergast nodded. "Big Al's Gas and Go isn't just a gas station. We just ran a thermal satellite scan of the underground tanks. Tank 1 and 2 have gas. Tank 3 is empty of liquid, but it has heat signatures inside crates." "Gun running?" Lang asked. "Or fentanyl," Pendergast replied. "Ironwood is a straight shot from the border on the back roads. Hargrove wasn't harassing you just because he's a bigot, Commander. He was clearing the zone for a drop. He saw a federal uniform and panicked, thinking the operation was blown." Des stood up, pacing the room. "Who was on the phone?" "Boss." Pendergast swiped the screen. "We traced the call. It went to a burner phone, dead end. Usually," Pendergast smiled wolfishly. "But this burner phone pinged off the cell tower right here in this building." Des's eyes widened. He looked through the glass partition of the briefing room toward the sheriff's office, where Sheriff Reed was sitting, head in his hands. "Old Reed," Des whispered. "We need a witness to confirm the voice," Lang said. "The audio is a bit distorted. Any defense lawyer could argue it was just static." "We have a witness," Des said. "The rookie Brooks. He was in the car." Pendergast noted. "He's complicit." "He hesitated," Des corrected. "He picked up my try. He apologized. He's scared, not rotten. Bring him in." Minutes later, Officer Brooks was sitting in the interrogation room. He wasn't handcuffed, but he looked like he wished he was dead. He was shaking so hard the water in his paper cup was rippling. Des walked in alone. He sat down opposite Brooks. "Officer Brooks," Des said softly. "I didn't know, sir," Brooks stammered, tears welling up. "I swear I just started some time ago. They tell me to shut up and follow orders." "I know," Des said. "I've seen men like Hargrove before. They thrive on fear. But right now, you need to fear me more than you fear him." Brooks looked up, meeting Des's eyes. "Hargrove is going to prison," Des said. "That is a fact. The question is, are you going with him? You watched him assault a superior officer. You watched him falsify an arrest report. That's conspiracy. That's serious time. Brooks, you're young. You'll be out when you're older, with a felony record and no future. Brooks sobbed. Or, Des leaned forward. You tell me about the phone call. You tell me about the trucks at Big Al's. You tell me who Hargrove calls boss. Brooks took a shuddering breath. He looked at the mirror, knowing the feds were behind it. It's the sheriff, Brooks whispered. Sheriff Reed. He runs the whole county, the gas station. They move meth through there inside the fuel tankers. Hargrove is his enforcer. If anyone snoops, Hargrove runs them out of town or locks them up. And yesterday, the shipment was big, worth a fortune. Reed was terrified the feds were onto it. When Hargrove saw you, he thought you were the advance team for a raid. He had to get you off the street before the tanker arrived. Des nodded slowly. You did the right thing, son. Des stood up and walked out of the room. Pendergast and Lang were waiting. We got him, Pendergast said. RICO charges, drug trafficking, conspiracy, assault on a federal officer, conspiracy. What about Reed? Lang asked. Des adjusted his collar. Reed is sitting in his office thinking he can still talk his way out of this. He thinks this is just about a bad arrest. Des walked toward the sheriff's office. He didn't knock. He kicked the door open. Sheriff Reed jumped, spilling his coffee. Now, wait, just a minute. Get up, Des commanded. You can't talk to me like that in my station, Reed blustered. It's not your station anymore, Des said, and you're not a sheriff. Des threw the tablet onto the desk. It showed the transcript of Brooks's confession. Reed read it. His face went gray. The bluster drained out of him, leaving a hollow, terrified old man. It was just business, Reed whispered. The town was dying. We needed money. You sold poison to your own people, Des said, his voice cold. And when a soldier came through to bury a hero, you tried to destroy him to protect your profit. Des turned to the door. Agent Pendergast is all yours. As Pendergast and the agents swarmed in to cuff Reed, Des walked out into the main bullpen. Hargrove was being led out in chains. He saw Des. You ruined my life, Hargrove screamed, spitting at the ground over a stupid medal. Des stopped. He walked over to Hargrove. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the trident pin, the one Hargrove had pried off the day before. It's not just a medal, Des said, holding the gold insignia up to Hargrove's face. It's a standard, one you never could have met. Des turned to Lang. Commander, make sure the charges stick. I want the book thrown at them, the whole library. They won't see daylight for a very long time, sir, Lang promised. But the story wasn't over. The arrest was just the beginning. The trial that followed would expose a web of corruption that went far beyond Ironwood County. And Desmond Kane would have to testify, facing the men who tried to break him one last time. The federal trial of the United States versus Elias Reed and Vance Hargrove did not take place in Ironwood. The venue was moved to Houston, to a federal courthouse that felt more like a fortress than a hall of justice. The media frenzy was unprecedented. The image of the Medal of Honor winner in handcuffs had gone viral, sparking national outrage. The Ironwood Two, as they were called, were no longer just small-town bullies. They were symbols of a rot that the public was desperate to excise. But inside Courtroom 4B, the atmosphere wasn't one of justice. It was a shark tank. Reed and Hargrove had hired arguably the most expensive defense attorney in Texas, Marcus the Razor Thorne. Thorne was a man who didn't defend clients. He dismantled the truth until there was nothing left but reasonable doubt. He wore Italian suits that cost more than a deputy's annual salary. And he had a smile that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. Commander Desmond Kane sat in the gallery wearing his full-dress blues, the restored trident gleaming on his chest. He was the star witness, the man who had brought the mountain down on Ironwood. Beside him sat Lieutenant Commander Bennett Lang. Thorne is going to come at you hard, Lang whispered. He's going to try to paint you as an unstable, PTSD-ridden soldier who snapped. He wants to make the jury scared of you. Des didn't blink. Let him try. The trial dragged on for weeks. The prosecution, led by a fierce assistant U.S. attorney named Sarah Jenkins, laid out the evidence. The dash cam footage, the burner phones, the drugs found in the gas station tanks, and the testimony of rookie officer Brooks. Brooks had taken a plea deal. In exchange for his testimony, he would serve probation and lose his badge. On the stand, he was a broken man, weeping as he described how Reed ran the county like a crime lord. But Thorne was brilliant. He tore Brooks apart on cross-examination. "Officer Brooks, you claim you were afraid of Sheriff Reed. Yet records show you accepted a Christmas bonus from him. You accepted overtime pay approved by him. You were part of the family until the heat got too high, weren't you? You're not a victim. You're a rat trying to save his own skin." By the time Brooks stepped down, the jury looked conflicted. Thorne had successfully planted the seed. Was this a corrupt department or just a misunderstood one caught in a federal overreach? Then it was Dez's turn. The prosecution calls Commander Desmond Kane. Dez walked to the stand with the same precision he used on the deck of a carrier. He swore the oath, his voice deep and steady. Thorne didn't wait. He launched his attack immediately. "Commander Kane," Thorne began, leaning on the podium, "let's talk about your hands. You are a Navy SEAL, correct?" "I am. You were trained in lethal combat. You know how to kill a man with a pen, a shoelace, or your bare hands. Is that fair to say?" "I am trained to neutralize threats to the United States," Dez corrected. "A threat?" Thorne repeated. Interesting word. On the day in question, Deputy Hargrove asked for your ID. You didn't give it to him immediately. You argued. You grabbed his wrist. You, a lethal weapon, put your hands on a law enforcement officer. Don't you think Deputy Hargrove was justified in fearing for his life? "He wasn't afraid," Dez said calmly. "He was arrogant." "Objection!" Thorne shouted. "That's speculation," the judge muttered. Thorne smiled. He was getting under the skin of the case. "Commander, let's be real. You've seen combat. You've seen terrible things. Is it possible, just possible, that you were triggered? That you saw a police officer, a figure of authority, and you projected your battlefield trauma onto him? That you escalated a simple traffic stop into a federal incident because you have a problem with authority?" The courtroom went silent. It was a low blow, weaponizing Dez's service against him. Dez looked at Thorne. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "Mr. Thorne," Dez said, his voice carrying to the back of the room without a microphone, "I have operated in environments where a single mistake means death. I have held my fire when terrorists used children as shields. I have possessed more restraint in a single heartbeat than your client has displayed in his entire life." Dez leaned forward. "I didn't grab his wrist because I was triggered. I grabbed it because he was about to desecrate a uniform that better men than him have died in. And as for fearing for his life, if I had wanted to hurt Deputy Hargrove, he wouldn't have been able to arrest me. He would have been on the ground before he cleared his holster." Thorne paused. He had hoped for an outburst. Instead, he got a sermon. "So you admit you could have hurt him?" Thorne pressed, trying to salvage the point. "I admit I chose not to," Dez said. "Which is the difference between a soldier and a bully." Thorne was losing the room. He decided to play his final card, the technicality. "Your Honor," Thorne addressed the judge, "the defense moves to dismiss all charges related to the drug trafficking. The warrant obtained by the FBI was based on the fruit of the poisonous tree. They seized the dashcam footage illegally before a warrant was signed. Without that footage, there is no probable cause for the search of the gas station. It was a legal Hail Mary. If the judge threw out the footage, the drug charges would vanish. Reed and Hargrove would walk away with a slap on the wrist for misconduct." The judge, a stern woman named Justice Caldwell, looked at the prosecution. "Ms. Jenkins, did you seize the footage before the warrant?" "We secured the scene, Your Honor," Jenkins argued. "We didn't view it until it's a gray area, Your Honor," Thorne shouted. "And in a federal court, gray means not guilty." The tension was suffocating. Reed and Hargrove were grinning. They thought they had won. They thought the system was broken enough to save them. That was when the back doors of the courtroom opened. A man walked in. He was elderly, using a cane, but he wore a suit that looked tailored in the 1970s. He carried a battered leather briefcase. He walked past the bar, ignoring the bailiff. "Who are you?" Judge Caldwell demanded. "Amicus curiae, Your Honor," the old man wheezed. "Friend of the court. My name is Albert Rossi. I own Big Al's Gas and Go." The blood drained from Sheriff Reed's face so fast he looked like a corpse. "Mr. Rossi?" The judge frowned. "You're not on the witness list." "I was in hiding, Your Honor," Rossi said, hobbling to the front. "Reed told me if I ever came back to town, he'd kill my grandson. But when I saw the commander on the news, when I saw what they did to him," Rossi placed his briefcase on the table. "I didn't just rent the tanks to Reed. I kept a ledger, dates, times, payments, and recordings." Thorne jumped up. "Objection. This is a surprise witness." "Sit down, Mr. Thorne," Judge Caldwell snapped. She looked at Rossi. "You have evidence? I have the audio recordings of every meeting Reed had in my back office," Rossi said, including the one where he ordered the hit on a state trooper who got too close last year. The courtroom erupted. Hargrove put his head on the table. Reed stared blankly at the wall. The technicality regarding the dashcam didn't matter anymore. The floodgates had opened. The twist wasn't a legal maneuver. It was the conscience of a man who had been terrified into silence, finally finding his voice because one soldier had stood his ground. Des looked at Rossi and nodded. Rossi, with tears in his eyes, saluted back. The sentencing hearing was swift. The jury had deliberated for less than hours. Guilty on all counts: racketeering, drug trafficking, conspiracy, assault on a federal officer, deprivation of rights under color of law. Sheriff Elias Reed and Deputy Vance Hargrove stood before Judge Caldwell for the final time. They were in orange jumpsuits now, stripped of their badges, their guns, and their arrogance. Judge Caldwell adjusted her glasses. She looked down at them with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You were entrusted with the sacred duty of protecting your community," Caldwell began. "Instead, you turned your badges into licenses to steal, intimidate, and destroy. You thought you were the law. You forgot that the law answers to something higher." She turned her gaze to Hargrove. "Mr. Hargrove, you mocked Commander Kane's service. You called his sacrifice a costume. You attempted to strip him of his dignity. In doing so, you revealed that you possess none of your own." She looked at the papers before her. "For the charge of racketeering and drug trafficking, I sentence you to decades. For the assault on a federal officer and civil rights violations, I sentence you to decades. These sentences are to run consecutively." "Decades," the judge pronounced. "You will be eligible for parole when you are old. I suggest you get comfortable." Hargrove swayed on his feet, grabbing the table for support. Decades. It was a life sentence in all but name. "Sheriff Reed," Caldwell continued, "as the ringleader, you betrayed every officer who wears a badge. You were sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. But the true hard karma wasn't just the time, it was the destination. As the bailiffs led them away, Lieutenant Commander Bennett Lang leaned over to the defense table and handed Thorne a piece of paper. "Transfer orders," Lang said with a grim smile. "Where are they going?" Thorne asked, packing his briefcase, already mentally moving on to his next client. "Low security? Club Fed?" "No," Lang said. "The Bureau of Prisons has designated them as high risk due to their law enforcement background. They can't be in general population with the gangs they arrested, so they are being sent to a special protective administrative unit." "Where?" "The military disciplinary barracks at Fort Leavenworth," Lang said. "There is a special wing for civilians who commit crimes against the military. It's run by the Department of Defense." Hargrove froze at the door. He heard Lang. "Leavenworth," Hargrove whispered. Des walked up to the railing. He looked Hargrove in the eye one last time. "It's a tough facility, Deputy," Des said softly. "The guards are all MPS, Marines, Army Rangers, Navy Masters-at-Arms, men and women who wear the uniform you spat on." Hargrove's eyes widened in absolute terror. He wasn't going to a prison where he would be a cop among criminals. He was going to a prison where he would be the man who disgraced the flag, guarded by the men who defended it. Every day, for the rest of his life, he would have to look into the eyes of a soldier and remember the mistake he made at pump number 4. "Enjoy the stay," Des said. Hargrove was dragged out, his legs giving way, screaming as the heavy oak doors swallowed him whole. Days later, the sun was setting over the Oak Haven Veterans Cemetery. The air was cool, the heat wave finally breaking. Commander Desmond Kane stood before a fresh grave. The headstone was simple white marble. Master Chief Petty Officer Thomas Caldwell, U.S. Navy SEAL. The only easy day was yesterday. Des was alone. The media trucks were gone. The lawyers were gone. It was just him and the memory of the man who had taught him everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the trident pin. It was the same one Hargrove had pried off. Des had straightened the needle, but the gold still bore a small scratch, a scar from the battle. He knelt down and pressed the trident into the soft earth at the base of the headstone. "Sorry, I was late, Chief," Des whispered. "Ran into a little trouble on the road, but I handled it." He stood up, brushing the dirt from his knees. He adjusted his cover, snapped a slow, perfect salute to the grave, and turned to walk back to his car. He didn't look back. The war was over. The uniform was clean, and justice, though it had taken the scenic route, had finally arrived. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you never judge a book by its cover, and you certainly never disrespect the uniform of a United States Navy SEAL. Deputy Hargrove thought he was the apex predator in his small town, but he learned the hard way that there's always a bigger fish. Decades in a military prison, guarded by the very people he mocked. That is the definition of poetic justice. What do you think? Did Hargrove and Reed get what they deserved, or was the sentence too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. We post new true crime-inspired dramas every week. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.